Yeah?
Yeah.
Hare Krishna. Okay, so thank you for tuning in for another episode session of Facebook Live. And so my name is Nish. It's been a while since I've been with you all, probably about what, good 2-3 months. But anyway, it's good to be back with all of you. Hope you're all doing well. So today we've got joining me special guest, my good friend Ter Kadamba. How are you today?
Hare Krishna, I'm very well, thank you.
Good, good.
And thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming. So basically, Ter Kadamba Prabhu was been practicing spirituality for a while now. He was actually one of the monks here, doing a lot of outreach work, trying to develop seminars and workshops to kind of educate people on what Krishna consciousness is about and how it can actually enhance our daily lives. At the moment, he's obviously practicing from outside, and he does a lot of corporate outreach work where he goes to corporate companies and helps to give them some self-development tools to help them in their, not just their professional lives, but their personal lives. And of course, at the same time, incorporating some sort of spiritual ethos into their lives, I guess.
I mean, that is the basis of everything that I'm saying. So yeah, that is where it leads. So however much anyone wants to apply what I'm saying, or they just want to kind of have, like, in the weekends, they can say, oh yeah, we had an ex-monk come. That's up to you. That's up to anyone individual. But if you really want to apply these principles, yeah, it does lead back to a spiritual practice.
Okay, that's interesting in the sense that you give them some knowledge, understanding, and how much they take to it and to what level, that's essentially their prerogative.
I mean, that's
whether they want to take it to a spiritual level, whether they use some of it for just to enhance the material, efficiency, whatever. That's obviously their choice.
You can't really meditate for other people. You kind of have to do that yourself.
Yes.
So
I wish it was that simple, to be honest.
But but then at some point you have to let them go. And if I'm pushing them, that means the moment I let go, they're going to stop anyway. So it's in that sense, it's a waste of time. So my focus should be on producing inspiration so that they will be inclined themselves. And actually, to be honest, I'm quite surprised at how positive the reactions are generally. Yeah. Usually you'd think that like a corporate environment is like a tough crowd in terms of spiritual knowledge.
Hard-nosed, cutthroat businessmen.
The bottom line is the bottom line, right?
Yeah.
So it's usually, you wouldn't think that like spiritual principles are like something they jump on, but you convince them that they can make a little bit more money if they do, and they're surprisingly motivated, right?
Yeah.
So, and that's basically the principle we're working with, is that because what we're doing is what we call transcendental. It transcends the material plane. Sure. That means it works on all levels. So you want to make more money, you want to have a better relationship with your wife, you want all these things, all these day-to-day problems that everybody has to a certain extent can actually be mitigated by this knowledge. And so that's what the objective is, to illustrate how that happens.
Yeah, and it's actually enlivening just to like hear this, because I remember the other day we were in the car going to a program together, and you mentioned how you were actually going at a certain pace in terms of giving them like deeper understandings, and they themselves, at least some of them, came up to you afterwards saying, no, I want more, tell me, what is this meditation, how to do it?
Yeah.
Right. And that's, like, for me, it's incredible. Like, they're actually going up. It's not like you're trying to coax it out of them, this interest. They actually, out of their own accord, want to know more, and they want to actually get to that kind of like the essence, which is obviously the mantra meditation that we do.
Yeah.
Just like fantastic.
Yeah, well, thank you.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, in a group setting, if I'm doing a seminar for a group of people, one of the main things is that I shouldn't leave anyone behind. So I'm trying to speak in a certain way so that I keep everyone involved. Now, in that group, there will be some individuals will catch on more than others, and those individuals will be inclined then to come and ask me. One of the last time I gave a seminar, one guy in particular came up and said, "You're not telling me everything, are you?" I was very, very direct and very specific, and so then I know that, okay, this guy, he wants more, and then he gets it, right? So, but one of the main principles is you shouldn't really be disturbing people by laying too much on them,
sure,
too fast, right? So it's a kind of a balance, and you have to see from one crowd to the next. There's a specific dynamic that you have to be in tune with. And this takes a bit of experience.
I can see where you're coming from, and it's interesting because before actually doing obviously this kind of this corporate outreach work, I remember at one point when obviously you were still as a practicing monk within the temples. You actually you had this project going on called Ask a Monk.
That's correct.
Yeah, where you actually go to like different places, and actually was it like just like town centers?
It could be anywhere. Usually, let me just explain what it is in all its simplicity. I would just go in my monk robes, sit down in a public space, and I had a tiny rudimentary sign saying, "Ask a monk any topic." And so then people would just come and ask me questions. We would have a small conversation, and I would try to incorporate some spiritual principles into the conversation that would be relevant to that person. Because at that point I was traveling around a lot and giving seminars in North America, Europe, India, Middle East, and so wherever I went, I would try and do this. Obviously, Middle East not so easy, but in private there were private programs where we did it. But usually, at least in Europe and North America, I would go to some shopping area, because it's my experience that had the best effect, because I would be most out of place there. People are walking around, they're looking for something, and there's this guy sitting there. It seems like he already found it. So let's try and, and I'm very out of place in the middle of a high street or something. So it would kind of spark the interest of the mind to come over and ask me some question. And then on top of that, when you say any topic, the mind goes, really? So it would be almost like a dare, so to speak. So I had a lot of fun with that, and learned that many unlikely people are quite curious about spirituality.
But it's interesting you said any topic. So for those of you obviously who may not know, Ter Kadamba is actually very knowledgeable, very proficient on many topics, and how to actually even look at those topics from a spiritual perspective, and see, how, because often when you look at it from a spiritual perspective, you're looking at it from a somewhat like a detached view. So you can actually see it in a more deeper and more objective way.
Yeah, that's the whole idea of spirituality, is to detach ourselves a little bit from what is immediately going on around us and see things in a little bit of a bigger picture. And specifically detach ourselves from our emotions and our mind, because these processes of the mind, the transformations of the mind, have a tendency to cloud our vision and to color it in a certain way, so that we see things not as they are, but as we are, actually. And so in that sense, spirituality can help us gain clarity over any number of situations that we may find ourselves in during the day. So it's a very practical process.
I guess there's an analogy that I once heard, like it's almost like we're all wearing different glasses with different colored lens. So none of us actually seeing the vision as it is. But then if we actually take our glasses off, right? In other words, like, like sort of trying to like go beyond our material conditioning, material lens, then we can actually start to see the reality in its true light. Like that kind of sort of understanding, really.
That's a good analogy, and if we can even take it further, that what sometimes happens then if you take off colored lenses is you get more light in your eyes, and that might actually be uncomfortable initially. It's just like if you've been in a dark room for a while and you go out or you turn on the light, your eyes are actually in pain. So why am I saying this? Because it actually takes some effort to practice this spirituality. It's not enough, unfortunately, to read one book on mindfulness. You have to put in a little bit of effort on a daily basis. Otherwise, it can be a little daunting.
Okay, that's actually interesting, because you mentioned mindfulness. So we will actually talk about certain contemporary, let's say, self-realization tools that are out there in the modern society, and
Yes.
and how do we view them in the right perspective. Now I've noticed actually there are already a few comments coming. We just started basically,
Okay.
and there are already a few comments and you know, some questions that are coming through. So what we'll do is we will come to those shortly, but I think it's time we should actually get started with today's topic, really.
That's good.
So obviously, as you might have known from the posters, we're looking at the modern education system from a Vaishnava perspective. Now you might think, okay, I mean, we've had so many different topics: karma, reincarnation, knowing your nature. You know, they're kind of very, you know, high pizzazz topics. Education. Well, I mean, hello, it's probably one of the most important topics we can think of. I mean, it's all pervading. So I think it's definitely, and you know, since we're trying to give Krishna consciousness in all levels of our lives, then yeah, we should know, because education, what you go through in your life, through your system growing up, that shapes how you look at life and how you operate. So yeah, let's look at this. So Vaishnava perspective on the education system, I guess some of our audience will be practicing Krishna conscious practitioners, so in the sense that they'll know what a Vaishnava is. Some will be kind of like getting into Krishna conscious, and some are just there just to see these Facebook posts out of interest. So I guess just for like aiming at the lowest common denominator, for those who are like completely new, how do you firstly define a Vaishnava?
Vaishnava.
I mean, this is like a whole thesis in itself. You can spend a whole series talking about what a Vaishnava is, but at least just for the sake of the discussion.
We can do it short.
Yes.
Vaishnava is someone who serves Vishnu, and Vishnu is God. So people work for so many things. People work for money, they work for beauty, they work for power, they work for physical strength, going to the gym all day. There's so many things people put in work for, and a Vaishnava works for Vishnu, works for God. And so that means that the final goal of ideally any activity of a Vaishnava should be to please God, or the Supreme, the whole.
Like the divine consciousness.
The divine consciousness, and more specifically, you could say, if you say it more pragmatically, that there should be an overall positive reaction or result from whatever you're doing, not for yourself, but for the universe as a whole. Does that make sense?
Yes.
You're working as a servant of others, right, rather than a servant of yourself.
Right. Okay. Two things that come to mind. Again, I'm kind of playing devil's advocate because obviously I'm practicing process myself, but just for the benefit of especially the new viewers here, what is that? How is that connected to Krishna? Because we're all saying that we're Krishna conscious practitioners.
Yes.
And secondly, let's say I'm a typical 21st century materialist, and they say that in this age, everyone's always listening to one radio station, WIFM. What's in it for me? It's all well and good me serving and dedicating my life to a greater cause for the whole of the universe. How is that going to benefit me? So let's start with the connection to Krishna, and then let's go on to the, you know, if I'm like a complete self-interested modern day man who's into individualism and, you know, just doing it for himself. So then, yeah, if we can elaborate on that.
So Krishna and Vishnu are basically synonymous. They're two names denoting God, the supreme consciousness under which everything is working.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
So when we say Vishnu and when we say Krishna, we're meaning slightly different things. So the example is usually given that Vishnu is like God at work, and Krishna is God in private.
Okay. Okay.
So if you see a high court judge at work, everything's quite formal, but when the high court judge comes home, that authority and that formality goes away, and he becomes more, you see more aspects of his personality. So that would be what Krishna denotes. Does that make sense?
Yes, yes.
So it's two different terms that describe the same person, but in a slightly different context.
Yes, I remember actually once reading this book, and one of our Krishna conscious literature, and it was I think it was an analogy by Srila Prabhupada, of course, who founded the Krishna conscious movement and brought it to the Western world. And he mentioned that, like, you know, there was a precedent in the olden days, I think in America or maybe an old British prime minister, I don't know. But, you know, he had his ministers who'd come see him and he'd be very prim and proper and professional, authoritative. And then once one of the ministers actually came to the office and he was on all fours on the ground and his little grandkid was on his back playing giddy up.
Yeah.
And so that basically made the minister look at that prime minister in a whole different way. It's like that was a much more intimate, more, you could say, cuddly aspect of that prime minister.
It's the actual person you're seeing, not the job title.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So that is the kind of relationship that we are ultimately trying to develop with God.
Yes.
However, in order to get there, you have to go through the formality first. It's like if you go up to someone you don't really know and you're too friendly and like intimate, that person gets a little bit turned off. So you would approach a person with some level of etiquette and formality first and introduce yourself and so on and so on. But then as you get to know the person more, you would start to play around with these things more and more. So then Vishnu would be the initial way to approach God, and Krishna would then be the more intimate later when the relationship has developed, right?
Okay. So yes, we are practicing Krishna consciousness, but obviously Krishna, divine consciousness, he is a multifaceted personality. If we, as you know, tiny human beings, have got different aspects to our personality, why wouldn't the supreme consciousness have that? And therefore, the first entry point towards connecting with the divine consciousness would be through a more respectful, reverential methodology.
Introduce yourself.
Yeah, introducing. So therefore, we connect with Krishna as Vishnu, right? And then as we progress in our deepening of our spiritual connection, then we start to step into a more kind of like a close, more loving relationship where the trappings of, you know, formalities and reverence start to drop away, and you start to actually, commune with them in a much more intimate, sweet way.
Exactly.
Okay, and that would be Krishna. So Vishnu, Krishna, same person. Vishnu is the more formal aspect. Krishna is the more intimate aspect of the divine consciousness.
Yes.
Excellent explanation, I must say. Wow. Excellent. Okay. So that, I guess, defines Vaishnav. Obviously, as we know, this Krishna consciousness, it comes from ancient scriptures going thousands of years back. And our scriptures, they cover all aspects of existence, whether it be politics, philosophy, spirituality, economics, military, warfare, wealth, everything. And of course, that would include education. What is the okay, well, let's just look at it two ways, I guess. Firstly, if we're to look at the aspect of what is the Vaishnava education system, that's quite broad. Let's divide it. What is the purpose of the Vaishnava education system? Let's say eons ago, when there were big, massive civilizations, society that really were living under a Vaishnava culture, as we had discussed in previous seminars on, history of Vedic culture and things like that. At that time, they had an education system based on obviously the scriptural edicts and things like that. What was the main purpose of this educational system, and what was the way in which it would operate in the society itself? How it would be operating and catering for the different members of the society, the different students and the youth of the society. So firstly is purpose, and then methodology.
Well, the purpose, we already touched on it actually. The purpose is to help us introduce ourselves to Vishnu. If we say that this is the purpose of life, is to develop this relationship with the Supreme, to actually be in harmony with your surroundings in any given situation. You see people, there are certain things we like, certain things we don't like, and when we're in a situation we don't like, we feel awkward. So the Vedic education system is to develop character and build character so that you are able to deal properly in pretty much any situation you find yourself in. What does properly mean? That means selfless. It means that you're not exploiting situations, you're not exploiting other people. Factual knowledge is not very high on the list in education, in Vedic education. Not that it's not there, but simply that if you develop the proper character, the accumulation of facts is not really that difficult. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah.
So the Vedic, I mean, Veda means knowledge.
Right.
It literally means knowledge. So
Sure.
Vedic means that which is based on knowledge. Knowledge means giving you a proper understanding of your role in the world and how to deal properly with it, right? So that's the purpose of Vedic education.
Before we get on to the next part, just
Sure.
one thing though on that, if I may.
Please.
You mentioned again, and this goes back to the second part of the previous question, which we kind of like went over, but this will kind of cover it as well. That you mentioned that obviously the one of the main purposes of Vedic system is obviously to develop character and live in a selfless manner, for the betterment of the overall society, for mankind. Again, let's say I am a 21st century materialistic person who's living in a society where it's basically dog eat dog and the strong win and the weak don't. Why would I want to develop such a character being so selfless? We have this modern day adage, the nice guys finish last, right? You must have heard of these things.
I have heard of it.
I mean, we're not saying that it's true or not, but the point is that nowadays the modern current day culture does adhere to such things. And we will talk about the modern day education system and the state where it's at now. But before we do that, why be selfless? Why would you want to go through that?
Well, just look at those who are not. They're the most miserable people on the planet. The more selfish you are, the more consumed you are with your own happiness, your own comfort, your own prestige, the more miserable you are, the more concerned you are, right? If you're concerned about your own welfare, you are concerned. It's about your own welfare, but you're concerned. Conversely, if you see who are the happiest people you ever meet in reality, you will find that they're generally people who are not that concerned about their own happiness. They're using their energy on other things. If you walk into a room and you make people happy, that automatically makes you happy. So that's the trick of the world, is that if you really want to be happy, you can't. But if you don't worry too much about it, it's quite easy, actually. So if you're really concerned about your own happiness, stop worrying about it. Start focusing on other things. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I'm laughing because I remember once we did it. It was actually you and me. We had a conversation, and we were talking about how in high school you have those guys that obviously, in high school, let's say all the guys, they fancy the girls, and then those guys that fancy the girls but are desperate to want to get the girl, they don't actually get the girl. But those guys who've got like other things going for them, that they're not so fussed, then actually the girls flock to them.
Yeah.
Right. Often you see that. This is like a typical kind of like a scenario you see in pop culture and movies and stuff like that. So it's almost like the same thing, that if you try and really like sort of push for the happiness, what you're saying is that it may elude you because you're just doing it for your own ego. But if you actually expand yourself to actually try and work for the betterment for other people's happiness, then naturally the happiness comes to manifold.
It's like you could say a job interview also. If you're just desperate to get that job, it's unlikely you will perform well at that job interview, right? Why is it so difficult? Public speaking. You just get up and start talking, but it's the idea that, oh my God, I'm being judged. So then people find it more scary than death. Like surveys have been made that literally show that if you're talking at a funeral, there's a good chance you're jealous of the dead guy. Right? Okay. So because people are more afraid of public speaking than actual death, right? Because it just becomes you're worried, right? And that just breaks everything. So that's why if you develop character and put your focus on other things, then happiness is not actually that difficult. It's not actually that complicated.
Okay. But then, so this brings us to another point that, let's say I'm being difficult here.
Yeah, please.
So you're saying,
so well. You do it so well.
Let's say you're like, a guy in the modern world, and are you trying to say that all those people that have actually you know, got their own way in life, trampling other people, and they've climbed up the corporate ladder or this ladder or whatever, and they're like the king of the heap.
Yeah.
So you're saying that they are by and large miserable?
Yes. Not, I mean, by and large is being kind.
You're saying every single one of them?
I mean, very close. Because it depends. I mean, because what you said was like climbing the corporate ladders, hack and slash.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And when I say corporate, not just corporate, like let's say any
Fine.
Scenario, you know.
Fine.
Yeah.
All the beautiful models, all the famous people, all the millionaires, all the power brokers,
emperors, kings, whatever. Yeah.
If the more important it was for them to obtain that, the more miserable they'll be. The supermodel can't go outside a door without spending an hour in front of the mirror. The corporate leader is on his third marriage and he has to drink a quarter of a bottle of whiskey before he goes to bed every night. I mean, the famous person doesn't know who his friends are. There's like a 15-minute window between rehab and back on drugs. I mean, it's just too much, you know. However, because that's the key point here is that does that mean that I will automatically be miserable if I'm successful? No, it doesn't. Because you see, there are successful people who are fine, who are great, but they're not overly concerned about the success. I mean, if you find pleasure in doing something and doing something well and doing it thinking about whether it will benefit others, you may be enormously successful and it won't mess with your head because that's not why you're doing it. What happens is if you're too concerned about your own success, one of two things are going to happen. Either you will be a failure, you won't get it, and you'll be miserable because you didn't get what you want, or you'll get it and you'll still be miserable. Now you don't know why you're miserable. That's even worse. Because you get a new car and in a week it's just going to be your car. You know, it's just like famous people, rich people, they don't wake up every morning super excited to be famous or rich. It's just their situation and they have to deal with all the attention and all the fake friends and all these things, right? So thinking that these external parameters are in some way related to my happiness, that will make you miserable because it's just not true. Yeah. So that's why if we should segue towards modern education, that's why modern education, partly why modern education has a problem, because we haven't really tackled why. Why do we want all the youth to go to university when there are practically no jobs in a modern society that are academically that are based on academics, right? Yeah. You need an academic degree just to get a 9-to-5 that has nothing to do with what you were studying. Very, very few who come out on the other side of the education system actually end up doing exactly what they were studying.
So for example, let's say you got an undergraduate and he's studying, I don't know, law, but he might end up, you know, working in, you know, I don't know, some consultant or you know, possibly even in retail or something. Could be completely different. That I'd even go as far as to say that's like the norm. I don't think most people, I mean, you know, we could even like, you know, put it to the forum that, you know, of all the degrees that, you know, people, let's say, I'm sure a lot of people are watching this, they've got degrees. How many of you are actually in a job that is related to a degree? In fact, let's be even, I could even probably be a little bit more cynical. How many of those who actually did a degree even actually thought that they'll actually get into their career? Because a lot of people will just do a degree just for the sake of getting a degree, just because, you know, it might be better to get, you know, better and helping you to get a job.
No, but I mean, that's the point. That's the other thing that that goes wrong, is that the education system is run like a business now. So that means that it's like supply and demand. University education is in large supply. It's just very expensive. But it's in large supply. That means that you won't get an interview without it. It's not really relevant for your job, but if you have 100 applicants and 90 of them have a university degree, it's very unlikely they're going to take 5 of those who haven't in for an interview, right? So you have to have it, and you're gonna pay dearly, but it doesn't really help you anyway. So that's why if you look at first and second year students at universities in UK right now, I saw a survey that concluded that 82% of them are actually battling stress. Because it's like a lot of pressure, thousands of pounds every year, and it'll get you an interview. That's it, right? It's not really kind to our youth to set it up like that, right?
Yeah.
And so because it's a business, it's largely focused on cramming information into you.
Like rote learning.
Yeah, just you know, you learn the laws of the land, and if you study physics, you study some physical laws and stuff like that. But the element that we were talking about earlier from Vedic perspective, the character, they haven't learned that.
No.
They haven't learned how to learn, right? How to study.
I like that. They haven't learned how to learn.
Yeah.
Like as in okay, right. I see what you mean.
Because how difficult it is to focus right now in our social media world, where basically we have like the attention span of a goldfish.
Oh yeah.
Right. So like I'm doing some talks at Imperial College, one of the fine medical faculties of our country.
Very prestigious, yes, of course.
Of course.
Of course.
And that's the study with the most bulk of material you have to read through.
Sure.
Right. So if you can't focus, how are you going to read all these books? Right. It's very, very hard. It takes a long time if you have to check your phone 250 times a day.
Yeah.
Right. So what we're teaching, and the school in India where I was studying, is that you teach them how to focus. Right. That's why meditation is one of these key elements, because that is literally one of the main takeaways from meditation, is the ability to focus for extended periods of time without the mind flickering so much.
Right. Okay, so it is good because you've already touched on the kind of like the purpose of the Vaishnav education system.
Can I just add one thing?
Sure.
It's interesting to see how these consultancy companies and banks are willing to pay big bucks for me to come and teach the people they're already paying how to do this.
Yeah.
So you'd think that the universities would have an incentive to add this to their curriculum, right? Because corporate, whom they're providing workforce for, are requesting it, right? So it's yeah.
It's funny because actually, you know, like even when you go back to obviously Prabhupada's day, in many interviews, he actually said to them that I think he was doing like a talk at Massachusetts School of Engineering or something, and he said to them that you've got your departments for mechanics and this and that. It's all technicalities, but where's your actually you know, your department for actually you know, spiritual elevation, you know, along those lines that actually help that person to actually use that technical knowledge in the right way for the right purpose. And I guess this comes back to the understanding that, you know, you've very nicely described the kind of purpose of the Vaishnav education system, that ultimately, well, on an absolute level, obviously, is to help you to connect to Vishnu, to Krishna, and obviously in the process you develop
to connect with anything, really.
Yes.
Because that's really where we are missing the point here. I mean, the actual connection with things. We're always in the future or in the past, or we're on the phone. Someone said, I forget who, but someone said very nicely that this mobile phone addiction makes those who are close very far, and those who are far very close. So where are you actually? Right? You're never really in one place. You're always kind of roaming around mentally. So that means that you can't really do anything proper. Right?
And it's interesting because when you mentioned that aspect that if you actually work selflessly for others to actually enable others to have happiness, you get yourself. And it's funny, but not doing it for your own self, it doesn't mean that as Vaishnavas you cannot be successful. I'm sure a lot of people who are practicing Krishna conscious, they may have you know, like this they may be working for a successful life, but it's like the motivation behind it. I was even thinking, like, you know, of course we follow the teaching of Bhagavad Gita, And even in that, like Krishna says to Arjuna at one point that you fight this war, you're a Kshatriya, you're a warrior, but it's not the fact that you're being a warrior that's an issue. You carry on being a warrior, it's all good. Just do it for the right intention. Do it for me, as opposed to doing it for your own ego, so you can, like, you know, just be the king of the heap.
I mean, if you're doing it for your own pleasure, then as soon as it's not pleasurable, you're going to be questioning, why am I doing this? So it's very difficult to maintain motivation in the face of adversity. And if we know anything, I mean, it is that life is hard. It's not easy, you know. So how do you keep going? Well, you have an option. You have two options. Either you do it for a higher purpose than yourself, or you have to be a complete psychopath and just like, I don't care about anyone. I'm just working for number one. And if you see successful people in successful spheres of life, of power, of finance, you have an increased
high proportion of psychopathic personality.
Exactly, right?
I see the stats,
but important to note that they are not happy. They're not happy people. You know, they're deeply desperate for their own kind of self-perseverance, right? So do we want that? Is that an ideal to follow? I don't think so. No, I'm not jealous of them.
No. We've got some lot of nice comments and questions coming through, so we'll get through to them. Just want to touch on one thing. You did describe the kind of operational aspect of the modern education system, the fact that it is very much like a kind of like a factory, you know, with like cogs, just bung them in and get them into university. Employers will see, okay, at least the guy did something to sacrifice 3 years. So yeah, you know, whatever degree he did, okay, let's just put him in a slot in our company.
He can have. There is an element of self-sacrifice in getting that piece.
So then he might be willing to do that same kind of self-sacrifice for us.
Why not? If he does it for the university and he pays big bucks to do it, then probably if we pay him, we can exploit him as well.
Yes. Now, what about the operational aspect of the Vaishnava educational system? You said it's character-driven. So, as opposed to the kind of modern day machine-like structure of this educational system, which is very much, you know, based on economics, really. How does the traditional Vedic education system work?
So, well, technically it begins at conception, right?
Okay.
There's what is known as samskars.
Early learning. On another level.
The parents perform rituals to put themselves in the proper frame of mind, even at the time of conceiving a child. And throughout the pregnancy and the child is born in the first few years, there are principles in place that are meant to develop the child in such a way that it will be calm and have what we call a pure nature, not a mixed nature, so that when it's time to actually start training and educating, that the child will be properly situated. So you see in some parts of India, you have children down to like age of 5, 6, 7 that already know like 10,000 like mantras, or can recite like extended text, Sanskrit text, just by memory. They're not old enough to really understand, but just because memory is very, very good with young children, right? So very early we try to put them in the right frame of mind.
So you're saying that their frame of mind is not, because you know, obviously the modern psychological theories, they'll talk about nature and nurture.
Yes.
Right? That, you know, like for example, your genetics and of course the way you're brought up. So you're saying that that even before the child is born, even before the whole kind of body structure is made, just the consciousness of the parents when they're about to conceive the child is going to play a major part in, of course, how the child is going to end up being, in terms of its intellectual faculties, in terms of its maybe character as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Because that's the big paradigm shift.
I mean, but you know it even from modern society that the mommy and daddy are talking to the belly. Why are they doing that? They're doing it because they feel there must be some effect. So we just I mean, more a little bit, take it a little bit more serious, and take it a little bit to another level, right? And it's just based on these shastras, these scriptures, the Vedic scriptures, which we could easily call a proven track record. Over thousands of years, these are still being used today successfully, right? So we'd have to say that's, we can say with relatively big, safely say that there is a positive effect there.
Okay.
So, but then, at around 5, you'd say that now, because for the first 5 years, it's about safety. It's about making the child feel calm and safe. So that means basically the world revolves around the child. That's the job of the parents. At age 5, a slight paradigm shift happens where now the child has to learn that it's actually not all about you. There is another world that you have to prepare for now. So the boys would usually be taken to what is called Gurukul, which is the school system for boys in ancient Vedic school system. And the girls would usually be trained at home because girls are more perceptive than boys.
Okay.
Socially,
we're getting some interesting territory here, actually, because we're talking about girls and boys here, which is a very pertinent topic. But anyway, please carry on. Okay,
let's just start with an example. That the man is doing something around the house, he doesn't know why he's doing it. That is like...
The man is doing something around the house, but he doesn't know why he's doing it.
He's moving some furniture from one wall to another wall.
Sounds like Homer Simpson to me.
Could be.
Yeah, okay.
The wife knows why. She didn't feel that it was necessary to tell the man.
That is like Homer and Marge, actually. The more I think about it. Yeah.
So the idea that it illustrates is that women are generally more clever than men, socially. Right. They're more in tune with what's happening socially. That means that the girl can be trained usually at home, whereas the boy needs to be taken out of that environment into an environment where he can be specifically told, do this, don't do this. The girl will notice herself, based on what the other women of the house are doing, she will notice, oh, so they're doing like this and like that. They're more astute like that. But the boys, usually, they're just running around aimlessly if they're not being told exactly what to do. Now, when they are told exactly what to do, they kind of like it, because they like to feel that they're part of something. Like when daddy's fixing the car, he can hold the flashlight and, oh, I'm helping fix the car, right? He feels like included and it's great, but he has to be told to hold the flashlight. Does that make sense?
Okay, so that means, so are you trying to say that basically and the reason, because this is really relevant, especially when you look at what's going on in the modern society now, with obviously different ideologies coming and going and things like that. We live in interesting times, folks, definitely. And maybe, I'm sure in the course of the discussion and maybe in subsequent discussions, we'll have to look at this in more detail. But are you saying that the differences in our character on a general level, but even on a specific level, even let's say gender-specific differences, they are also something innate within us that maybe have, are developed, as the child is growing, as opposed to just being culturally, what's the word? Culturally indoctrinated.
A cultural construct.
Because the Western, let's say a lot of the Western psychology, they'll say now that, oh, the girls are taught to think that pink is their color. The boys are taught to think blue is their color, and they're taught to play with cars, and they're taught to play with dolls. But what you're saying is, no, actually there's something deeper going on here.
That is, first of all, that is factually wrong. We know from studies that the more equal you make the playing field, the more men and women will tend to act differently.
Really?
Yeah. Well, you would say that, oh, if you even the playing field,
then everyone will be like,
it will be the same. But actually the exact opposite happens. And this is not new science. This has been known by modern science for decades.
Okay.
It's just it doesn't fall into the political climate of today. So, but in Scandinavia, where I'm from Denmark originally, you'd say these are some of the most where equality has gone furthest, right, between men and women. There are the less cultural divide.
Sure.
You see
in terms of the occupational duties and like duties in life and things.
And you see in those countries, more women choose nurturing professions and more men choose like engineering than, let's say, India, for instance.
Okay, and I know there's a lot of talk about this, even like outside of you know, whether it's spirituality in like modern society. But again, let me be difficult here for a minute. Are you trying to say then that, let's say, a society like Scandinavia, where it's more like, you know, women and men are very much have got equal roles in society? See, I'm very careful about using the word equal in a kind of value-based thing, because it's like they have, let's say they've got different roles, whether one is higher than the other, we're not saying that, but so maybe let's say they're different. But the point is that, let's say you've got a society like Scandinavia, where let's say they're trying to level the playing field. Compare that to, let's say, a society, a very traditional, like rural India, for example, or, you know, some place like that, where it's much more traditional. You can even say patriarchal. Are you saying that the gender differences? Huh?
No, I wouldn't use the word patriarchal.
Okay, what would you use?
Tradition.
Okay, let's say traditional society. So then, again, I might have got the wrong end of the stick here. So, but are you saying that the women in Scandinavia, from the level to playing field, have become more like women and the men are more like men compared to a traditional society in rural India?
No, I'm not saying that, because that's talking about, again, character.
Right.
I'm talking about profession.
Okay.
The generic explanation. I mean, we have to understand we're dealing with all women and all men right now, so we cannot deal with this topic without generalizing.
Okay.
It's just impossible to talk about all people on the planet without generalizing. However, in a general sense, the less you push women or men to do this or that, the more they will choose the men to work with things, and women will work with people.
Really?
This is modern science. I'm not saying it.
No, fine.
It's not my opinion. This is, studies have been made, and many studies are. I mean, it's not like one study, and it is huge groups of people there.
Because that in itself is quite interesting, because because for a lot of like, let's say, people living in Western society, it seems like there is an increase of women in, let's say, traditionally male-based occupations than you'd find in, let's say, a traditional society. Like, you have probably more women engineers and women, you know, like sort of, you know, well, you've got women bus drivers and women, I don't know, army personnel, compared to, let's say, a rural traditional society in India or Africa or something like that. But you're saying that actually, that on the contrary, the women actually will still gravitate towards more professions based on their psychophysical nature.
It's always funny to discuss this, because people in the West, it blows their mind. It's just, you can't really, it's like, you've asked me 3 times now. And it's like, it's still the same answer. Women want to work with people. Men want to work with things. And when we're talking about all people in the world, we are generalizing, right? But generally, that is the case, right? Right. So this was actually a side point to what we were talking about, right? That the men, they need a different environment to be taught how to find their nature. Women don't. Women are actually more capable in the environment where they're comfortable already to find their nature. Boys are not. So that's why they're taken to the Gurukul and they're being trained there. So from 5 to 12 is basically let them try out whatever is there. I mean, let them try out some different things. Let them see because sometimes they want something really bad, and then when they get it, they find out, nah, it's not so fun anyway. But in the course of those early years, they find their nature. Together with the parents and the teachers, of course. And then at age 12, some of them, that's just where school stops, because, you know, as we touched on earlier, very few jobs actually need academic training, right? So if you're gonna be a carpenter, or you're gonna sweep the streets, or you're gonna stand in a shop or something, you don't really need to go to school more. You just need to be trained in that. And so you get some more practical training, and some who show more like intellectual inclination and ability, they will then be trained further. And some of them, they will never leave the school. They will be the ones teaching. That is another principle in the Vedic that is quite practical, is that as you progress as a student, you start teaching. That's one of the elements of learning something, is actually to teach it.
Right.
Because then you're being forced to look at it from different perspectives depending on who you're teaching.
Sure.
So
it's interesting because when you look at even in Europe, in medieval times, you have like the serfs, the clergy, and the medieval, the knights. And then when you read the ancient books on medieval times, you find actually a lot of the people like on the peasantry, they would actually be put into guilds and artisan trades from a young age, where they learn their craft. And so it's not that they have to like sit in a classroom learning some knowledge which is going to be bored out of their head, and they'll be fidgeting in the background and then causing disruption, which of course may happen in some schools in the modern age, dare I say, right? And then those who are more inclined, let's say the ones who are like more intellectual, they might be going off to the monasteries to learn more texts and things. And those who, of course, who are the I guess more martial orientated, often like sons of nobles and stuff. They'll be obviously learning the rules of governance and things like that, and obviously fighting. And I guess is this kind of like what you're saying, like you kind of like looking at the nature of the child from a very young age, and then putting them in that direction, so they're saving a lot of time being wasted.
Yeah, so exactly, because one of the things that are very highly regarded in our Western world is you can be whatever you want, but that's not the best thing to say to a child.
Right.
That's just too many options.
Yeah.
Because anything you choose, you're gonna choose not to do like a million things. So it gives you this decision paralysis. So instead, try to guide the child and try to search out what's the nature that's already there, and just present that. It will be very natural flow, and you'll never need anything, because what you're doing, you like doing what you're doing.
Yeah.
It's not necessary to have all options, right? And what happens, like if you do that, is that you actually end up with like I think it's like 15% of the grown population that are actually illiterate. They can't read. They've gone to school for 10, 13 years, something, and they can't read because it's not.
Are you talking about in the Western world?
Yeah.
Right.
And they can't read instructions, right? Not even Shakespeare, but just like read instructions.
Right.
Why? Because it's been linked with such feelings of guilt and insufficiency, because it's been crammed into them without taking into account their nature. So they are not being nurtured, right? So that means that you can't learn in that environment. If you're uncomfortable in the school system, you can't actually learn. You have to be comfortable, right? It's not difficult to learn how to read. I mean, some are dyslexic and it's more difficult than for others. But for most people who don't learn how to read, it's simply because they're being pushed instead of inspired. Because we're not nurturing them, we're not building that character.
So the key thing is that it's not like, even like, let's say we put them in like, one is obviously you just put them in random things that got nothing to do with their nature anyway. Or let's say at best, like in the, because the thing is, you see Ter Kadamba Prabhu, like there are, still certain schools right now in this age where they are looking at, like alternative schools, where they are looking at, what's his nature, how to put him in, like for example, in a lot of schools now they have these things called gifted and talented for those, or like they have apprenticeships or academies, right, which are kind of looking at the nature. But I guess the issue here is that on a more underlying level, even if you do put them in nature, the value is obviously based on economics.
Yeah.
So it's the fact that, okay, you're going to do this nature, you're going to do this this discipline according to nature on the basis they're going to make you, rich or successful with high status. Whereas in the Vedic Vaishnav system, it's that no, you do this this discipline, this practice to enhance your character development and ultimately to enable you to become more of a selfless, character and live a more like a holistic life, you know?
You could say it like that, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so basically in the modern context, everything is looked at as economics, right? Profit.
Yeah.
And so you should be a profit for society.
Yes.
Right? But the problem is that if that's the incentive, then how do you judge that? Right? What's the framework by which we judge it? It becomes very arbitrary. So it's very difficult to know if you actually fit in or not. And that again feeds this individualism. Oh, we should embrace everyone and stuff like that. But should we? I mean, is everything as good as everything else? And if not, how do we value it? And we get to a point where it becomes really, really interesting. Like where, let's take the Gillette commercial now.
Okay.
Right? So Gillette is this brand of shavers, and there's been this Me Too movement, basically the point of which is you should not exploit women, which I think pretty much every sane person can get behind.
Yeah.
So the Gillette corporation think we can actually, you know, do something here. They made a commercial that we're talking about toxic masculinity, and men should not be toxic masculine, and proper masculinity is to stop those who are toxic masculine and stuff like that, right?
Okay.
So what's the reaction of that? Well, a lot of men get offended because it's like, well, you're just taking for granted that we're exploiting and we're basically rapists just by default, and we have to make commercials to teach us not to be, right? And the women are like, well, didn't you used to put fancy models in your commercials, and now suddenly you're on the other side? That's hypocritical. And there's a whole trip of backlash there. Why? Because there's no framework. We don't know where are the values and where do we go to find them. It's just kind of like the villages with the pitchforks, you know, that come out.
Yeah.
And so it becomes a very divisive environment, social environment. Does that make sense? Media will tend to inflate this because it's a very easy way of getting people's attention.
Yeah.
And so this environment, and this has taken root in modern education also, where you have a lot of like social justice warriors who are picketing and having very strong opinions about this, that, and the other thing. And it doesn't create a very nice environment for learning and owning your skills and developing your character.
For like a more spiritual foundation.
For anything, even for profit. That's the point. So that's why we say with the Vedic scriptures, that's your framework. And we're all unique. We're all special. We're all like freaking unicorns. But here's the framework we're working with. Everyone steps over the framework in whatever way, you know. But as long as it doesn't go completely nuts, that's fine. You know, be unique. Be the woman engineer. Like when nobody's saying you can't, right? But you can also. It shouldn't be that there's a stigma that you can't be a woman nurse because you're not liberated.
Do you feel that the society that we're living in now is coming to that? Because it's almost like we're going like 180. You know, like in the sense that you had like strict patriarchal Western society. Then of course from that, the world wars happened and everything like that, and kind of like some cynicism, disillusionment crept in, and now it's like, no, let's just break down the structure. You got the modernistic society, and now the postmodern, where you went from like a kind of state of like, this kind of like very xenophobic and very, the sociopathic kind of mood towards each other, oppressive, to let's just be super liberal. But that super liberal is leading to like an oppressiveness again.
No, I would say definitely the super liberal is the sociopathic,
right?
Not the conservative at present stage, because there's no, like I said, there's no framework. You don't know what, like Disney Corporation, they fired the movie director for some tweets, offensive tweets, homophobic, I believe, or something. Tweets he made 10 years ago. They didn't want any association because they know what the backlash is going to be. Now they got a backlash for firing him because it's like, well, it's 10 years ago, get over yourself, and you're just trying to score easy social justice warrior points by firing him. So there's no way to act. You don't know how to act. It doesn't matter what you do, there's just going to be a backlash because some people love to be offended. They just like being offended. Right. So it doesn't matter what they're offended by, they'll find something. And media likes to blow that out of proportion. And that is being fueled not by toxic masculinity, but by toxic femininity. It's actually opposite. When you're living in a society where it's all you hear is about toxic masculinity, you can rest assured that you're living in a toxic feminine society, right? Because that's what you're not allowed to address. That's what gets you the backlash, right? So it's a very convoluted situation right now, and it has. Why are we talking about it now? Because it's very much taken its toll on the education system, especially in the social sciences. It's like all pervading, right? Okay. So in the Vedic we say here's the framework. It's the Vedic scriptures. That's the framework we're working with. And if you want to be part of this institution, you have to, at least on a theoretical level, adhere to this. And then we can be very open and accommodating about like making exceptions for unique people who have unique situations and backgrounds and all that. That's fine, but at least we're in agreement about where we're trying to go with this. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Okay. So, obviously, like I said, these are very, very, hot topics now. Hot topic. We've touched on a lot of hot themes now. Is Vaishnav educational standards, is it political or apolitical? Apolitical.
Completely apolitical.
So for us, it's not a question of femininity or masculinity. No. It's about what your nature is, and just basically using that in the best way to bring happiness to others.
People who are the most miserable are the ones who are concerned the most about their own happiness, concerned about it, right? Why are they so concerned about it? Because they're not in a situation where they can live out their nature. Whatever, we have so many different interests and talents and inclinations, and if we're being told what we're supposed to like and what we're supposed to be good at and what all the successful people are good at, that doesn't really jive well with our feeling of our nature, right? So that's the point of Vaishnava education, is just to allow people to live out their nature, whatever it might be, completely apolitical, and then be happy. Because when you're happy, you're of value to society.
Okay, again, I'll play devil's advocate here for a minute. You mentioned, okay, look, we're not, it's in the Vaishnava educational system. You live and operate according to your nature, then you'll become happy. It's like your calling, and once you know what your nature, like a fish, his nature, I guess, is to swim. It won't be happy flapping about on the land, but you put it in the water, it's happy as Larry. Let's say, again, you're a modern day cynic, and you say that, oh, you're saying that the modern educational system is telling us what to do. But let's say if you're living in a Vaishnava educational system, and you're a boy who's 5 years old, he gets sent to a Gurukul, isn't he being told what his nature should be and things like that?
Some boys, no, I mean, first of all, no.
Okay.
That's part of the Gurukul system, is that the boy is allowed to try out different things in the early years, especially, right? That whatever is, if the boy wants to play musical instruments, play musical instruments. See how long. I mean, and if that's your nature, you will keep playing musical instruments, and you will like to play it whether people are clapping or not.
Yeah.
Right. If not, then you'll get tired of it, and then you want to learn some Sanskrit or whatever. Right. So that's the idea, is that you give the child the opportunity of trying out different things. Having said that, the Gurukul system, the environment is a particular environment, and some boys are just not really cut out for it, so to speak. Not because there's anything wrong with them, just because their mentality is different. And so you wouldn't put them through 10 years of Gurukul. That's what we do in the modern, right?
Yeah.
That it doesn't matter how you feel about it. You have to go to school.
Yeah.
And a lot of people, myself included, I was quite good at school. I hated it because I couldn't see what's the point. And looking back with my Google on my telephone, I have to say I was right. What was the point of learning all that geography?
Yeah.
I have Google Maps. Right?
Yeah.
So it's like all this information doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
Right? And kids know that. No, and yet in the modern, we are cramming them through, and you have to go every day, and 20% of them come out the other way, and they can't read because it's not good for them. So the Gurukul system says, okay, if it's not your nature, there's no reason for you to do it, right? But it doesn't mean you can just do whatever you want all the time, because that's back to the basic point of the Vedic education system, is to build character. But it's not all about you all the time. Okay. Because that's the one thing we haven't taught our children in the modern.
Like lack of values.
We've taught them that it is about you all the time.
I think that is the value.
That's the value of your modern society, is that you can do whatever you want all the time, and you can't. So it's a complete illusion.
A lot of people will be disappointed with that, because obviously we got the modern system.
But it's about time they find out, because this is the reality.
Yeah, because like nowadays, like, you got this thing about, like you said, you can be who you want to be. You can be whatever you want. You even have a lot of like these self-help videos. Like celebrities, and they say that you just put in the hard work, focus on your goal every day. Just just work on it every day. I mean, yes, it looks inspiring, but maybe we have to accept the possibility that before we even actually like set your goal and work on it, first find out if that goal is the right goal for you.
Well, first of all, first things first, you can be whoever you want to be. It sounds great. Yeah. But you're already you. Yeah. I mean, you don't have to become, that's the problem. You can become something. Does that mean I'm nothing? No, you're already perfect. That's what it sounds great when we say these, these motivational sweet talkers on there's a ton of them on Facebook, right? One of them I heard say that you have to find your passion so that you keep going when everyone else stops. And my question is, do you tell everyone that? So everyone keeps going when everyone else stops. That doesn't make any sense. You're going to burn out everybody. It sounds great if you don't think about what it means. Yeah. But if you stop and think about what it means you have to burn yourself out. Then you'll be happy. What? That doesn't make any sense. It's like taking your car and then going 60 on the motorway in first gear. Yeah. That's going to ruin the car.
Yeah. I mean, it's almost like when they say that you do this, you're going to become rich. Obviously, for a person to be rich, there has to be people who are not rich. Exactly. And then that may raise the question that those who did, let's say you got 10 people who start off poor, and of those 10 people, 3 become rich. They may end up giving self-development seminars in the future saying, yes, if you did this like I did, and you become rich. But then there may be the possibility that no, it worked for you because that was maybe let's say your karmic destiny, that was your psychophysical nature, but those other 7 people, maybe they weren't meant to be on that path. That's the point,
that these spiritual motivational talkers, they don't deal with nature at all. Yeah.
It's coming
just keep going, just push, crush it, develop the giant within, whatever it is. It's like, we usually don't use coarse language, but it's BS. Right. It benefits one person, and that's the person talking.
Yes. I've got a question here. I think it's an interesting question, if I may. This is from Vimal Prabhu. So this is a question. When a man does not behave in accordance to his masculine nature, I mean, let's just say, obviously, this is not just about masculine, feminine, this is about education, but I guess masculine, feminine does come into it. Maybe it's worth doing another seminar on that, actually. It's anyway, food for thought. Okay, when a man does not behave in accordance to his masculine nature and becomes more feminine, doesn't that create an imbalance in society? And if it does, should men empowerment? Okay, there's a lot of these new terms going around social media. Obviously, I'm a monk, not fully conversed with all of them, but I guess this is one of these ones. Should men empowerment be encouraged to stabilize harmony in society? It's quite a loaded question, Vimal, I must say. Okay.
There will never be an imbalance, because what happens is that as feminism takes over, that means basically women are encouraged to be more masculine. Men, it will always find a balance. That means men will be more feminine. It's just, it can't be in any other way. When the women take over some of the area that you would usually say is traditional masculine, the men will have to find somewhere else to be, and there's only one way to go, and that's feminine. So it'll always find a balance. It won't be out of balance in that sense. It will be out of balance because it's against the individual's nature to a certain extent. Right? So that means that it'll be less stable. I mean, you see with debates on feminism and masculine toxicity and these things, it's usually seen as a gender war, basically. Right. And you don't, if you see outside in society, you don't really see a war, do you? I was sharing a tube carriage with quite a number of men and women today, and we were not at each other's throats, right? It's like we usually get along pretty well, but it's being presented as such, and that does in one sense generate an imbalance. Now, menpowerment.
Just to let you know, I have not. This is the first time I'm hearing this term. I can guess what it means, but I guess you've heard it before.
Never mind. No? Okay. Never mind. Menpowerment is a feminine term in itself. Right. So no, it's not. That's not the way to go. It's like, you know, female empowerment or women. That's what women like to get together to talk and empower each other and these things. Men just need to know a skill to do something. Then they will feel useful. But the problem in the modern education system is it's constructed for girls. Sit quiet, listen, do your homework, and you know you'll be appreciated. That environment is more suited for girls than boys. Boys there's too much energy. Right. They're not happy sitting like that and asking to do this.
Are we talking generalizations here, or are we actually talking like across the board?
But it doesn't matter. It is a generalization, right. But it's a proper generalization. It's like saying cars have 4 wheels, but are there no cars with 3 wheels? But it's like, but is that really important right now? Sure. You know, it's like we're generalizing, but it's true. That's a modern trick to say if you're generalizing, that means it's not true. Then you can't talk about anything, right? So basically, boys don't do well in modern education, and you can see that. They drop out more, they have more mental issues, they have lower grades. So that's just the way it is, right? So we need to change the way that we set up our education system so that it's more suited for boys. That's it. Then you don't have to empower them. If you try to empower them, say, good boy, that doesn't make you masculine, that makes you feminine. Okay. Because you'll be looking for that appreciation, that social aspect will be inherent in your way of dealing, and that is feminine by nature, right? Yeah.
Thank you. I hope that kind of sheds some light on your query there, Vimal. Okay, this is, I don't know if this is a question or a statement. I'll read it anyway. This is from Rekha. She's saying, women tend to be better communicators than men. Hence, they may be attracted to working with people, whilst men are attracted to working with things where not much communication is required. Of course, that's not with everyone, but this is a generalized statement in line with this statement. Okay, so yes, a statement.
No, and science has also proved this, that women are better with empathy, and they're better with communication. They're better at expressing themselves. Yeah. So that's exactly.
Okay. Umer's got a question here. This is actually, you know what, Umer, if you don't mind, I'm going to leave your question later on, because this is getting on a more kind of transcendental level, but let's work through the kind of the material quagmire that we're dealing with right now, and we'll get to that later. Okay, I've got some, few more points that I want to, clarify with you, I guess, or run through with you. We've got the version of ideal. Would you say that that there has to be an ideology behind education for the education to be effective? Because, a lot of the times, like during the age of the Enlightenment in the Western society, it was like, you know, they're kind of making a break from the religious thing, right? They're like, no, this religion, you know, we're not. History is not just Genesis. There's more to it than that.
It's not really religion. It's just basically authority in itself.
Right. So then they kind of get on this bandwagon that, okay, let's be objective, empirical. Firstly, I have my doubts as to how objective you can be. Would you say it's necessary for education to have an ideology behind it? And if, because it seems like there is an ideology, a Vaishnava education system is ideology driven. Because ideology is kind of like a, you know, interesting word.
I think it's important that we use words carefully. That's one of the things in Western culture that we're really bad at.
Okay.
What do words actually mean? Yeah. So ideology means an idea so Vaishnava education is not ideological. Modern is that there's a social and political idea that we follow. That's the lens we see everything through. Vaishnava education is philosophical. There is a philosophy. It's thought through.
Right.
So this is it's few people would be able to distinguish those words from each other, but it's very, very significant.
Okay.
It's important that you have a philosophy, that you have made extremely clear what is the objective and why is it good, right? But an ideology is just like, no, we're liberal, right? So that means that if you have like basically the wrong viewpoint, you may be excluded, and we have seen it, like university professors getting tapped on the shoulder and getting warnings for saying things that are literally scientifically backed up at universities, right? So that's ideological, that, oh, this doesn't fit into our paradigm, so you can't say that. That's not good at a place of education, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah, if I may ask them, aren't ideologies based on some kind of philosophy? Like when, you know, let's say Karl Marx and whoever, you know, they did all their socialist manifestos and all that stuff. Wasn't it based on some philosophy?
Well,
otherwise it just becomes emotion driven.
Yes, but that's what it is. That's ideology. Basically, is emotion driven.
Right.
So that's why I mentioned that enlightenment is not so much religion, but authority itself. That's where the problem starts. What they thought made them more objective actually made them more subjective. Because taking Vedic scriptures that have been in place for thousands of years, functioning, using that is probably the most objective you can get, because it means that literally billions of people in all sorts of different situations throughout history have been able to apply these principles successfully.
Yeah.
That means it's very objective. If we define objective as something that goes everywhere, right?
Right.
So in the modern, where we're talking about evolution of thought and evolution of bodies and so on, the newest theory can hardly be called objective, right? Because it's a very, very narrow testing ground we have for it, right? So that's why the modern has this problem with objective. It's not objective. Just because I can see something with my senses and I make some data points and I do some calculations, it's something you often hear in the modern education system, is make sure you have all the facts. But what are all the facts? All the facts of eternity of space-time since the creation of the universe? Where do you draw the line? And why do you draw the line there? Because you got the result you wanted? You know, that's not very objective. Whereas the Vaishnava is, okay, here's the books, we didn't write them, but a lot of people have, and you can see that people who follow these books, they become better people. They become happier people. We follow that. That's objective. And that's being seen as something, almost like close to brainwashing or something like that. That's brainwashing. Right? Saying stuff like that, that is brainwashing. We live in a society that is completely brainwashing us from we get up to we go to bed.
Yeah, I mean, because people may even say that the modern education system is actually, you know, it's almost like it's, you know, based on government mandated kind of like social standards, you know, like
Sure.
You know, and that's kind of like directing.
Yeah, and it's not even formulated. It's not really. It's not even defined. That's the problem what we were talking about before. Damned if you do, damned if you don't. If you don't fire the movie director, you're going to get a backlash because, oh, you're employing this guy. If you do fire him, you get a backlash anyway, right? So it's like there's no framework to work on. It's not being defined. Why are we the way we are? You know.
Okay. Surely, and again, this is like me being like a 21st century, you know, guy, go-getter, whatever. Surely there must be, because you know, obviously the way, you know, the way we're talking and the way you're describing it, it seems like it's a sorry, sad state of affairs, the modern education system that's in.
Isn't it? 82% of first and second year students battling stress. In a decade, the amount of students who are requiring about mental health issues have increased fivefold. Does that sound good? You know, it's not very good. It's not very good. And who was it? I saw an interview with Robert McNamara, the old Secretary of Defense from the United States. He said that when he went to Stanford, I believe it was, the tuition for a year was $56.
$56.
$56.
Wow. Amazing.
So is it good that we're charging these young people, and some of the students from abroad, they're paying like £40,000 a year? Do you think that creates a little bit of stress for that young person training to be a doctor? I don't think it's very good. And they have to learn how to live. They don't know how to keep a house. They don't know how, because parents have made it, you know, it's all about you. So they don't know how to do laundry. They don't know how to cook. And they have to teach themselves that on top of it because they just moved out of the house. So no, I don't think it's very good. And we already see actually that there are intellectuals talking about the bankruptcy of the modern education system, that what we're going to see in the next 10, 20 years is that the whole thing is just going to move online. Online.
Education online.
Of course. Why not? Because you don't need that big institution to run it, basically. So whether that will happen, I don't know. I'm not an expert on that, but I'm saying that already we're seeing that some people, intellectuals, like very knowledgeable people in this field, are saying that it may have actually already failed.
Wow. It's almost like watching a car crash in slow motion, and you know, like guys are trying to shout out to stop it, but it's just going on its kind of course.
But then if what you're requesting is a silver lining, you can easily do that, because it just happens. It just has to do with, we have to start reintroducing some of these things about character back into our institutions, right?
Like Vaishnav precepts?
Yeah, of course, because we know that they work. And I have given plenty of talks for university students, and they're eating it up. They're busy kids, right? They have a lot on their plate, and they stay an hour after the talk and ask questions, you know, just because they're getting something. They can see that they need it. I mean, it's useful. So all we have to do is reintroduce that. The dropout rate will fall, and the students will be happier, and they will be better equipped at using the valuable education they get, because it is valuable. It's just incomplete, right? So you can merge the Vedic and the modern and make something function. Because let's face it, the Vedic can be a little bit, I mean, we are after all in London, right? So having a full-blown Vedic education system, it may be good for few, not many, right? So
are you talking more about just introducing elements of it?
Yeah, exactly.
Bit by bit.
Like when we're talking about the principle of character, that will make it easier to learn anything, right? So that will decrease stress among students. They will understand that, okay, if you do fail one exam, it's not the end of the world, and you know, it'll start loosening up a little bit. So that's one way to go.
Okay, do you see any, dare I ask you this, do you see any benefits in the modern education system?
Very little.
Very little.
Very little.
Anything? I mean, you know, let's say, for example, people might say, what about the technological breakthroughs? What about the fact that we managed to cure this disease? What about the fact that, you know, we've got, people apparently live longer, or they might be healthier, we've got better nutrition, and blah, 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 blah,
That's
blah.
not true, though.
Hmm.
It's just not true.
Okay.
We don't live longer.
Right, right.
I mean, you know, it's like if you take people during a famine 200 years ago, okay, we live longer than that.
Yeah.
But the people 20, 30 years ago, we don't really live longer than that. We don't have nice diet. We like junk food. We don't know how to cook. You know, the hospitals are filled with people who have nutritional difficulties because they haven't learned how to control their senses themselves.
Yeah.
The self-control is not something we learn. We learn overconsumption, right? So it's not really that great, is it? I mean, sure, you can get a better job, but what's really good, let's say about being a doctor, is that you can do something good for others. And we are back to the Vedic principles, that it has to do with learning that it's not all about you. And the modern education system doesn't teach you that.
Yeah.
So then if you really want to be heavy, no, I see it as a slaughterhouse of free thinking.
Yeah.
Because there's a very narrow paradigm for what you are allowed to say and think. Some of these things that we are discussing now, like you say, they're hot topics.
Yeah.
They're also objectively true. So in an educational context, you're not allowed to say that.
Yeah. And that actually
then what is the worth of it?
Yeah.
What's the point?
It actually disrupts intellectual honesty.
Completely.
Well.
It undermines it completely.
Yeah.
And it's been studied, and it's a fact that most professors, there are things they just will not say, though they know them to be true.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, again, devil's advocate. Of course, we understand as Krishna conscious practice ourselves that the Vaishnav culture is something that, you know, goes far beyond what modern critiques would say. Modern critiques, when they think of Vaishnav or Vedic, they basically think of, like, you know, what's happened in India before the foreigners came. So they say, okay, it's caste system, abuse of authority, burning of the widow. You know, when the husband dies, it's called sati, right? They burn the widow. Oppression of women, lack of imagination, therefore lack of innovations, and that somehow the Western education system, let's just say not Western, it's everywhere now, but the modern education system has helped to bring the kind of like, got rid of the old Vedic Vaishnav system and brought bringing the world into the new world. How would you actually show them that, no, like, where is the evidence for the greatness of this Vaishnav education system? You know, obviously we mentioned that, yes, it's a great philosophy, it's been there. Is there some evidence that we can show of how great it was? That why people would want to buy into it in this day and age?
I mean, it's a popular technique to find someone who misapplies something.
I mean, yeah.
And then criticize the thing. It's like
yeah.
you see a drunk driver and then you ban cars. No, you get rid of the drunk driver.
Yeah.
It's not the cars is not the problem, right? So this whole caste system, burning the widow, and all these. Yeah, there's some pretty weird people out there, but there are weird people riding motorcycles also, right? There are weird people who are bakers. You know, you can't really approach it like that. You have to look at what it actually is.
Yeah.
So if you say, oh, it's this, it's that, it's not. So it doesn't make any sense for you to say it, right? So you have to look at where it. I mean, there is this school in Mayapur where I studied. Go check it out. Go look at the kids. These 12-year-old kids, 14-year-old kids, they're more mature than their own parents, right? So controlled.
Yeah.
Some of these 5, 6-year-old kids, they lie down and have a nap because they're kids, right?
Yeah.
And so they get up, they fold the blanket nicely, and they put it back in its place. Nobody has to tell them to do that. And they're not bothered by it at all. So you go there, look at it, you know? Don't make stuff up and say, oh, that's just what it is. Go look at it. You know?
Yeah, because these themes that I just mentioned, the critical themes, these are actually things that are actually pulled out from what they actually say.
Yeah, but these are people who haven't been there.
Yeah.
that's the beauty of not knowing, is you can come up with anything, right?
Yeah. Okay. Let's look at some more questions here. Okay, there's quite a few here actually. Right. Okay, let's go with this one. Okay, this is from Vimal. He's saying, I think this is based on like a statement that you made before. You are perfect as you are. This is so true. We don't need to fix ourselves or anyone else. When we are content with the reflection in the mirror, then we'll have reached a point of inner peace. Do you agree?
Partly.
Okay.
So in large part, yes. In large part, yes. You don't have to become anything. You know, you already are. But we should also be careful with this, just accept yourself as you are kind of thing, because who knows? Maybe you are a selfish ass. They are out there, right? And usually they're selfish asses because they don't realize that they are.
Yeah.
So it's not always enough. So that's what the principle of Vedic education is, that it's a lifelong endeavor.
Yeah.
And that's the principle of guru. That you have a guru whose job is to beat the selfishness out of you when you're not willingly letting it go. In large part, we're willing to let it go because simply, if not for anything else, because we are by nature good, actually. People like to do good things, right? But then there are certain areas where it's kind of a little bit more stuck than others, right? Where we feel proud or we're extra sensitive. And in those areas, we need some help. So we need to accept the authority of a teacher and the ability of the teacher to discern what's best for us sometimes. That sometimes I'm going to disagree with my authority, and the authority will be right, not me.
Yeah.
Because that's the modern also, that I'll take whatever I feel like, and whatever I don't like, I'm not going to take that because I'm perfect as I am. No, you're not. You're capable of way more than you think. You can go so far, but it takes a little bit of, sometimes you need a little bit of a beating. I mean, figuratively.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, please understand.
We're not condoning violence.
Right. Yeah.
So figuratively speaking, you need sometimes to have the pride kind of squeezed a little bit out of you.
Yeah.
And so it's a balance that we shouldn't feel bad about where we are or who we are, but we also shouldn't feel that, no, I'm perfect, right? There's still work to be done, right? But what we don't want is either, I'm perfect as I am, and then not working on ourselves, or, I'm so miserable, I'm so useless, I'm so hopeless. That's also selfish. It's completely self-absorbed.
Of course,
right?
Yeah.
So somewhere in between is that where you have self-worth, strong self-worth, self-confidence, but that actually allows you to see the faults in yourself. Yeah. Because you have confidence, you're okay with seeing, okay, I messed up there, or I should maybe learn to not be so loudmouth, or that would work for me, right? So that we continue to approach Vishnu and try to mold ourselves so that at one point we will be able to actually stand in front of God and say, how are you doing? Right? Without having to be ashamed of what we're presenting. Okay. Thank you very much. You're welcome.
We mentioned before the idea that, we can at least start, even from now in this day and age, to implement certain measures into society, particularly in the education system, towards bringing about more about this character development, leading up to this deeper connection, ultimately, essentially, to unravel the mysteries of life. Is there anything practical that you can think of right now that we can start to do? I mean, yes, we'll implement it. Is there any practical measures that you can think of that we can start to do right now to start putting this wheel into motion?
Chant Hare Krishna.
Okay,
wonderful. That should be introduced.
I love that.
That should be introduced in all institutions of education. I mean, look, it's like I'm doing it with financial consultants and medical students and physics students. It's not like they're cool with it.
Yeah.
And it works. You know, it's not like I don't care. People can do whatever they want. But if you want to know what's going to make you more bright and learn better, this is it. This is the #1 thing. Everything else becomes easier if you do that. So at universities, you can just have first hour of every day.
Yeah.
Just sit and chant Hare Krishna, then go on with your studies. And take that hour out of the studies. I guarantee you will do more studying in that one less hour than you would otherwise, right? So it's a scientific process. It's been documented. We can continue to document it as much as anyone wants. That will be the powerful
start off point to
everything else will
follow through.
Yeah.
We mentioned at the beginning there are other meditation processes out there right now in society. We mentioned you mentioned mindfulness.
Yeah.
Even I believe in the NHS they've got mindfulness, but you're specifically mentioning the Mahamantra, which of course is what we practice. Why specifically Mahamantra? Why not mindfulness? So now there is, in schools they have these things called philosophical sessions and morality sessions and things like that.
So the thing is, with meditation, you have two ways basically: passive, active.
Right.
So passive is vipassana meditation, is a Buddhist where you're just sitting and focusing on your breath and just allowing everything to be without judgment. Mindfulness is also derived from it. Mindfulness is basically what you call a spiritual practice if you want to present it to busy and skeptical Westerners. So there is no definition of mindfulness. That's again back to where we said we should be careful how we use words.
Yeah.
So mindfulness is not actually a thing. If you see on Amazon, I believe there are 1,800 books with the word mindfulness in it.
Yeah.
In the title.
Sure.
If you ask all of those authors, I'm pretty sure you'll get some wildly different definitions of what it is, right? Because it's not actually defined what it is.
Yeah.
It has to do with being aware, mindful, right? So going for a hike in nature can be a sort of meditation, right? A lot of people, they find that their problems go away if they go for a walk, or running, like exercise, can be meditational. But it's passive in the sense that you're not actively teaching your mind how to focus. It's more like, almost like a distraction from your worries, but a good one, a peaceful one. And that means that a lot of the little things that seem like big things, they will become small again.
Yeah.
And that means you free up a lot of resources and life becomes easier. And so many people report that they feel a lot better after sitting in silence for 10 minutes, 15 minutes, whatever. Or going fishing, or whatever it is they use as that meditation. So that's great. Active meditation, you employ mantras. So in this form, you're actively engaging the mind in focus. You're focusing on the mantra. So you're chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. That's the mantra.
Right.
Or there are other mantras. Some chant Om, and some, but you're focusing on listening to yourself saying this mantra. So your mind has this to focus on, and you're actively doing it, right? Now, it may be for some more difficult, because I mean, a lot of people, when I do these meditation seminars, they're reporting that basically the mind freaks out a little bit when you start doing it, because it's so uncommon.
Yeah.
But many things are uncommon. The first time you go to a gym, you're not exactly comfortable with it.
No.
Right? Many things that you do for the first time is like kind of uncomfortable, because you're just not used to it, right? But then what happens is, as you progress in it, you're going to be thinking at some point, am I the one saying it, or am I the one listening?
Yeah.
And you find out that you're neither. You're the consciousness that is experiencing the saying and the listening. So what it does, it in very practical way creates awareness that you are not the mind. All these crazy thoughts running around inside your mind. The good news is it's not you. It's just all these things that you've been affected by in your entire past, and specifically the last 24 hours, are just creating this very, very busy mind. But through the chanting, you're actually able to draw back from it and just observe it. And when you do that, you become liberated, technically.
Yeah.
Because you see, this is not me, it's just my mind. And so it actually fulfills that purpose of Vedic education, of separating what is material from what is spiritual. You are spiritual, you are conscious. Mind, body, your surroundings are material, they're just energy, right? So it creates a more powerful realization of your true nature. It just becomes easier, rather than speculating about what is my nature and who am I and what am I doing. You're just observing.
Yeah.
So it's very, very powerful in a good way, and that's why we say this is the way to go. It's just the way to go.
Brilliant. Thank you. Ter Kadamba, it was a tremendous discussion, and I must admit, I mean,
we touched on some interesting.
We touched on some very interesting topics here. Actually, you know, this whole Vaishnava perspective education system, there's so, I mean, I had all these points here that we're gonna look to cover, but I've probably only covered like a quarter of them. Maybe in the future we might need to do like a follow-up session and go, you know, churn it out even more. I'm sure that we've got a lot of wonderful comments and queries here. Nice questions, but what we might do is, because we weren't able to answer all your questions just yet, maybe park them for now, because you know, we can actually look at them for a future session. But for now, I think let's wrap it up. Call it a day. It's getting late, and until next time, Ter Kadamba, thank you so much, and thank you for everyone who's been listening to us. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. Please be tuned in again, same time, 8:30 next week, next Thursday. Hari Bol, and enjoy the rest of your week. Hari Bol. Okay. Arun? Yeah. Thank you very much.
You're most welcome. Thank you for having me.
Do I switch this off?